Hi everyone, it is November 3, 2022, and you're watching the Awesome10X Philippine Market Update. And the title is Why Too Many Risks Remain and Why Bearish Consensus Remains Profitable. You and I both know that we have been very cautious ahead of the November 2 event, which is the Fed raising rates, and the anticipation that it will continue to be very tight and it will continue to be very harsh for anyone who is trying to go long the markets through bear market rallies. So let's just take a look first on what happened in the index, what happened to the world before diving in on what these plenty of bearish movements continue to be. All right, so let's go through the index movements first, guys. Let me share my screen here. Presenting screen. Okay, let's go to the Philippine index. Your Philippine market is still open. It's 2:30 p.m. at the Philippine time. Your index is 6,150 points. I'm just going to read through the prices here first before going to dive into the charts, the news updates, and so on. You've got ICT trading 171 pesos, up 5% for the day, the only winner. 2% for Globe, 2280. You've got Semirara, 34.95, 3% up. Aboitiz Power, 32.75. Jollibee, 228. Aboitiz Equity Ventures, 57.50. BPI, 94. Emperador, 19.6. 8 winners, 22 decliners in your index of 30 stocks. Let's take a look at those that are unchanged or down for the day. San Miguel Corporation is 98.5, Wilcon is 29.65, AGI is 887, Converge is 12.2, Pure Gold is 30 bucks 40 cents, Mega World is 2 pesos, Robinson's Land is 14.78, GT Capital is 404, MPI is 358, Metro Bank is 51.5, Ascent is 6.1, Meralco is 296.4, PLDT is 1620, JG Summit is 44, Ayala Corporation is 648, SM Prime is 32 bucks, Monday is 1140, URC is 120 below, BDO is 127, Ayala Land is 26.4, SM is 816. It can be clearly seen from the index movements that the markets actually rallied on behalf of SM. Let's take a look at the charts that really went up and why we think that this rally in the Philippine market is still inevitably going to go lower, and why we will still pierce actually, or we will actually hit 5,000 either next year or a few months from now. So let's take a look at what the likelihood of that is. Okay, so the strongest in the Philippine market so far are the Aboitizes. So the Aboitiz Power continues to remain in high gear. You've got 32.75 for Aboitiz, actually trading quite an outperformance. We have noted last week that even in the 1997 Asian financial crisis, that there were actually stocks that still outperformed. We had tried to evaluate 1994 till 2003. This was a decade that we can argue that the Philippines also had devalued the Philippine peso from about 26 to as high as 53. It only stopped around 2003. And then, of course, that was the impeachment of ERAP. And then Arroyo took over. The economist, President Macapagal Arroyo, then actually instituted a lot of reforms for the Philippine market. We also had a lot of OFW remittances, the BPO remittances, and the general globalization, which unfortunately is not going to happen for 2022 and beyond. We have to discuss the main risks here of the Philippine market. It's not related stock specific, but actually a macro or a global economical risk. So let's discuss, of course, that there is the risk that the energy is, the Philippines is highly dependent on a lot of OPEC countries, specifically China, Saudi Arabia for our oil. We do actually try to import everywhere else, but wherever is cheap. So with OPEC countries sometimes being the cheapest alternative for the Philippines, or simply the world prices, you can see that the world prices are fixed by the world. So even if we wanted to actually have cheap oil prices, we may not have it. And even if we want to have cheap food, we may not also have it, which means that high inflation, no matter if the BSP tries to hike rates from about 6 to 7 to 8 to 10% even, we argue that the Philippine market is in for a tough time. So with a high interest rate that was reinforced, obviously, by the Fed saying that tightening too little is going to cause further inflation, which is going to persist, which happened in the 1970s to 1980s. We saw that in the 1966 to 1984 in the US, this was roughly a time of nearly 20 years, nearly 2 decades of zero returns. So that means that we have to prepare for that zero return environment. in thinking that cost averaging works. We argue that cost averaging doesn't work. It's actually concentrating on only items or picking stocks that will only be the only cash flows generating. So really in the marketplace right now, we argue that energy is actually going to be a self-sufficient country in terms of energy will be in demand. So you're seeing actually here, clearly you're seeing that the market is trying to identify Aboitiz power is self-sufficient, 50% renewable. Well, they want to say 50% renewable, but basically Aboitiz power has a lot of coal and plants, right? Visayas, Mindanao are electricity source. Now you can see that Semirara also has been supplying power for the Philippines, and that's the reason why it has gone up. However, at $40, 40 pesos here, coal prices have gone too high to the point that it's also been priced in. So you've got a lot of sellers as well. However, I would argue Semirara here about 27 might actually have some buyers. So this is already just in a trading range for your Semirara. Take note too that Aboitiz power does not have to be perennially on an uptrend. A lot of selling pressure here at 34 and 36 as well. You're seeing Aboitiz power go up. Obviously, Aboitiz Equity Ventures has gone up. You're seeing Aboitiz Equity Ventures actually outperform to the point of perhaps even outperforming, as we've seen in the US, energy stocks rising all-time highs, energy outperforming your S&P 500, your Apple tanks, Microsoft tanks, Tesla tanks. So in the Philippines, if you think that the property names here in the Philippines, like Ayala Land, will outperform, the answer is a no. We've seen how companies in the property sector underperform. It is very important in a very difficult environment that you know which stocks will not do well and which stocks will do well. So take a look at what's happened. Your Ayala Land continues to languish here, and Ayala Land comprises top 20% of your decades in this Philippine market. Your Ayala Land here trading at 26 pesos is still a sell. So there was a rally here at 30 bucks, another rally on your Ayala Land here at 26. But we argue that it's eventually gonna fall down. Maybe if we're gonna use the template, as I said, we're gonna be using our template in the 1997 Asian crisis. And we would argue that a 50% sell off is not something that is impossible. Unfortunately, for underperformers, it may not be as low as 50%. It could go as low as 75%. So I'm still of the view that Ayala Land still has leeway to fall from about 20 pesos, 26 pesos. Can it drop another 50% from here to fall near 13 to 16? And the prices here actually suggest that if Ayala Land cannot break 28 nor 30 pesos, the downtrend remains intact. So unfortunately, Ayala Land falling down means that Ayala Corporation is actually gonna fall down. You're seeing actually this Ayala Corporation rally from 565 towards 700, but that is, as you can see, very distinctly a lower high, guys. Ayala Corporation looking downwards, 900, 800, 700, and likely when it breaks 600, could actually retest this 450 peso area. What does that generally mean for your Philippine stock index? Your Philippine stock index still has leeway to fall. Your Philippine stock index here is at 6,154, and unfortunately, even if PLDT and Globe tries to rally up, as most telecoms usually, as we've seen in the past, they outperform because of those dividends, cash dividends. PLDT at about 1617 though might have some selling pressure, while it actually tries to have buyers and buy over time on 1.4 or even 1.2. So the only reason why your Globe, your PLDT has been outperforming, we know, is dividends. The magical answer here is dividends. Meralco has been piercing up from 260 to 290, but there still remains a lot of selling pressure here at 320 and 330. We are seeing actually this happen worldwide. As for ICT outperforming, that could be related to worldwide dollar, the strength of the dollar, because ICT gets their revenues using dollar revenues. And with the dollar likely continuing to outperform and shine against the peso, you're seeing that the forex depreciation of the Philippine peso has been quite positive to the ICT only in terms of Philippine peso terms. But if you look at the worldwide sales going down, trade tariffs going down, deglobalization happening worldwide, this is, however, still in a downtrend. With Amazon not selling well, with Walmart not possibly selling well, or Target, it sure means that discretionary spending will fall, and therefore even ICT is not immune, and this will also fall. Where would ICT perhaps fall? There could be leeway for it to fall as low as 125 or 120. But the point is that these downtrends are still intact, guys. Now, there about the Malampaya shell, yes, those are wonderful things. But I think that the Philippines is still, you can argue that ICT worldwide growth is still something to think about. So, one, just because oil and gas is actually a really bright spot in this economy, isn't really gonna just change things ASAP. Nonetheless, let's just read all the news that are relevant for ICT's outperformance. Okay, let's look at the outperformance of ICT here. Go to the PSE Edge and let's take a look at the material information and transactions. Disclosures. Okay. So we can see that on September 23, and there's a lot of share buybacks, but take note, in a bear market, even a buyback is not enough to stem the decline. Hindi, wala yan. New Data Protection Officer, press release on August 4. Their net income is up 50% to 209. This was last earnings, no, nung August. Earnings per share going up, throughput growth of 5%, revenues increasing 20% to 1 billion USD. So it should be noted that the only reason why ICT has been outperforming for 2022 was because it does earn in USD, right? There was flat growth, 5% growth in sales, and yet 20% increase in EPS, and plus the fact that they earn in USD, in dollars. So should their dollars actually decline, let's assume $1 billion becomes 1 point, let's say it goes $900 million, the fact that you can convert that into pesos and ICT is trading in peso terms, it still means that ICT is still profitable no matter what. However, those profits will still go down. And so I would say that the outperformance of ICT may actually be questioned over time. But the ICT Malampaya, let's just go through news here. In fact, the Philippine markets does have to have this energy. It is true. So let's go through these Wikipedia about Malampaya. The Philippines could be facing a major energy crisis in less than 6 years unless it can find alternative sources for natural gas. DOE citing Prime Infra. So indeed, the Philippines' last hope is to actually own gas companies. Here, let's read. In approving Malampaya deal, DOE cites Prime Infra's commitment to expand, develop nearby gas fields. Razon led Prime Infrastructure Capital commitment to expand gas and develop with an approved acquisition of 45% interest of Shell Philippines Exploration in the Malampaya service contract. Take note though that this today is not inside ICT. It is Prime Infrastructure, which likely will be a different company. So I would say that that is actually the only companies that will outperform, even in the US, is energy stocks. So in the Philippines, when you think about energy stocks, it could be oil and gas, and it could be your but with oil and gas, it has to be really a driller. So one reason why Shell Philippines and Petron in the Philippines still is not recovering, I think I can only point out to two things, no? Petron Corporation has to tell the world, or at the very least the Filipinos, that they would pay an interest or a dividend. If they pay a dividend, they would actually probably turn around. Without that, nobody cares. Take note as well that Shell Philippines has tried to pay a dividend last couple of months. They actually tried to pay here during the earnings call. The next likely catalyst for Pilipinas Shell is November 15. And if Shell Philippines, actually, this is going to be a stock picking session. If Shell Philippines will pay a dividend again of 1 peso, then Shell Philippines will net out 2 pesos for year 2022, which means that at 18 pesos, that would be more than 10% dividend yield. That would actually change and turn around Shell Philippines after November 15. So of course, at the end of the day, I don't want to predict that Shell will actually issue a dividend, but it might actually pay a dividend given the fact that Shell abroad, let's take a look at Royal Dutch Shell abroad, which is RDS. You can see actually that all of the oil companies worldwide are trading at an upper trend channel. This is your Shell abroad, no? Royal Dutch Shell is listed in UK and London Stock Exchange. And you can see naman from 2020 till 2022, 20 to 55. So there is really, if you ask me, is there an outperform chance for Shell Philippines at 17 peso? My answer would be a yes. And but I would be very bearish when it comes to the index. And we argue that the index still has leeway to fall with your properties, actually the ones with massive problems, no? Now, how about malls here? SM Prime may actually continue to deliver in terms of rentals, but the question here is whether these rentals will continue to remain a strong ability for SM Prime to charge when you've got a lot of retail companies probably having a problem next few years. Your retail spend might go down, which means that your retail investment trusts, and your malls would have a little bit of a harder time in collecting rent. So you can clearly see that SM Prime might actually drop here to 28 or 20 pesos. So our view is that it has leeway to fall, and I wouldn't be the first to judge here on where the bottom of SM Prime is, except that there is bigger risks ahead rather than predicting the bottom here. Too early to talk about bottoms, guys. Now, in terms of food, no, we talked about food being a resilient product even during recessions. Now, what we can argue here is that food is important, noodles and beverages are important, much like how Coca-Cola and Pepsi even managed to hit near all-time highs. Take a look at Coca-Cola here after good earnings from 54 to 60, downtrend, but not as bad as the entire indices are. You can even argue that Pepsi, which said that snacking continues to remain pretty strong even with higher prices, even tried to hit near all-time highs. This is Pepsi 2022. Your index is dropping, your Pepsi even tried to manage hitting all-time highs, but we argue even Pepsi is not going to be immune. So what's going to happen here? In terms of the Philippine economies, we do have to eat. That means your URC and Century Tuna would have to have a bid. But that doesn't mean that URC has free pass to go all the way to the moon. I argue that URC here at 130 still has some selling pressure. And the people who should, if you're going to be a buyer of URC, you may want to actually buy only at 100 pesos or 110, even as low as 80 pesos, as the risks remain still to the downside for the overall market with global prices continuing to go up. Take a look at your crude oil here. Your crude oil is still at $90. And if you are largely not self-sufficient, you will probably have to take some wheat abroad, those things. So let's take a look at the commodity stocks here, commodities abroad, just to have a picture of the world's oil, what's happening to Coca-Cola, oil, cocoa. So you can see that oil is near 90 bucks. Natural gas, which went from 4 to 8, is now at 6, but still 50% higher. You've got copper. Actually, there is going to be harder times for housing and construction. So copper will still be in a downtrend. No, downtrend for your, but your commodities like your food will not necessarily be down. Let's take a look at wheat here. Wheat has fallen a bit, but it's still elevated year on year, no? So you can see that wheat prices went from like 2020 was trading at 5. Now we're paying a price of $8, $9 for a wheat, no? So it hit as high as 12. There was some drops near 8, but it's still above 8, no? It's trading at 8.6. What's the implications of higher wheat prices? It means higher prices for your pasta, higher prices for bread, noodles. So in general, even with a lot of cost pass through, as we've said, no, there will be tough times even for companies like Jollibee. So Jollibee here, which actually is trying to be self-sufficient, no? The one bright spot is that chicken prices worldwide have actually fallen down with a lot of supply. So you can actually buy cheap chicken prices. That was evident with Pilgrim's Pride's numbers, no? So Pilgrim's Pride exports their chicken worldwide. So US, UK, you can see that outperformance from 21 to 24. Cheap chicken prices would help Jollibee, as we know that chicken is the biggest cost of Jollibee, not necessarily beef. Nonetheless, that should be more of a neutral, no? 240 pesos for Jollibee trades at 40 times multiple. That is a very expensive multiple, which means there's leeway for actually a drop for Jollibee back to 200 or even 170. Or even if it outperforms, no, there will still be actually a lot of tough times for people to question whether Jollibee is really managing their dollar depreciation risks as well. Take note that the Philippines is not gonna be resilient here, so consumer spending in the Philippines will be very tight. Thoughts on nickel? When it comes to lithium and nickel, they are very strong. In fact, the profits of Ganfeng Lithium was 600% up. Albemarle reported very good numbers. That's why if you would ask me, Nickel Asia would actually be something of, if it's oversold, people will buy. But if it's overbought, people would sell. So the way I see Nickel Asia, you do have a reason to buy it, just like Shell, because commodities, even in a country like this, is the only company that can actually export and earn a dollar for it. No, so Nickel Asia here at 5 pesos. Yes, I am bullish on commodities. There's a question, thoughts on Monde. Monde, the question on Monde really is on one hand, food is a necessity. I argue food is a necessity. But the argument of Monde is that it is still expensive versus URC, no? So if you take a look at Monde Nissan's pricing here, it traded at 13 pesos during the IPO. We argued that during the IPO, it was trading quite an expensive premium of about 30 times even. And even if you say na ngayon, it's just 11, no? From 13, it's now 11. It briefly went as high as 20. Then, of course, the markets realize na, you can never really pay such a premium for Modernisen, no matter how much of a staple good it is. Although people would say, Nikki, is weird to actually assume a 4 pesos or 8 peso price on Modernisen. I'd argue that maybe it doesn't go 4 pesos, but I would still say it could fall, no? It could fall. Let's take a look at just the recent numbers of Modernisen here. Monde. Parang nasa 30 plus times multiple pa rin to because of lower earnings. So wala rin naman importance yung dividends, guys, if it's not more than 6%, no? So hindi ko sasabihin that dividends of 1% is gonna really dent the Philippine market to think otherwise on a company. So let's say if Monde try to issue dividends of 40 cents, 50 cents, I don't think that is really big. The big picture is still the fact na the question really is whether they remain profitable and how high those profits are. I myself always buy their products, no, so Pancit Canton, as all Filipinos do. But just look at the impact of year to date. Okay, so gross revenue, you can see it grew 10%, but this is mostly pass on cost, guys. Because nagmahal ang bilihin, they really passed it on to people. Tumaas yung presyo ng bilihin, pinataas nila. How far would the Philippine markets pay that price? It's a question mark, no? Okay, nasan yun again? Monde, nawala ko ba? Quarterly reports, no? Go through the quarterly reports. Tingnan mo lang. Okay, so your income, so far, it says here that umakyat yung expense, higher wages, di ba? 28 to 31, you've got non-operating income, buti tumaas, but probably it's a matter of cash. Non-operating expenses, tumaas yung income here, but the markets really didn't care, no? Because they are foreseeing, actually guys, even if mag-all-time high pa yung profits ng Mondenisen, very clear for the world that consumer inflation is gonna be the biggest risk here, not the current. So I think I can see stats here. I remember looking at stats of Monde, trading near 30 times multiple. So ang question mark lang talaga dyan is valuation. In terms of Monde, you can buy it, of course, when it becomes cheap. Okay, let's take a look at your services industry here. In terms of services industry, Wilcon actually outperformed this year. Mrs. G still try to hang on. Actually, for Pure Gold and Mrs. G, here's the thing about supermarkets, guys. To be fair, although there is a very strong buyback program of Mrs. G, here about 1.3, 1.30 plus below, the question mark on everyone's head is it enough to stem the potential decline? And usually what I would say is that sometimes the markets, no matter how cheap a company is, they would only buy it if you try to issue a dividend rather than doing a buyback program. So my sense here is that if, for instance, because Mrs. G is in a buyback program, I think the markets will appreciate more if they just follow the Semirara route, which is DMC and Semirara kept paying cash dividends. So Nickel Asia has to pay cash dividends more than doing buyback programs. And also, the companies like of course they just have to follow the template. The template is simple. If you pay cash dividend, the markets will so far insulate you. That's what's been happening with Meralco, PLDT Globe in the Philippines. It's happening in Aboitiz Power. It's been happening in DMC Semirara. And for food companies, I'd say that kasi food, Monde and URC isn't really expected to give a huge dividend naman. But if they can pay kahit na 2 to 3%, I think the market will appreciate that. It will try to make a pricing on the floor. Just as Coca-Cola abroad actually pays not a big dividend. Actually, Coca-Cola just pays 2.5% dividend yield. So that's something to think about. Ma'am, anong comment niyo po sa FOMC? Bearish or neutral? Fed will raise hikes, but how high and not when? Fed said that, so I was bearish all throughout. So actually, with the Fed rate hike, I was actually positioned to the bearish side. So I did earn money. In fact, I will actually we were consensus bearish, no? So here you can see that I have some, you can see that I have many shorts, and I would like to tell the Filipinos here that you can still open your eToro accounts, Webull accounts, IBKR accounts. So you don't even need a lot of money, no? So actually here, for the month, no, I was able to grow from $1,000 to $18. So you don't need a lot of money, guys. You can do a little bit, no, of short selling. In fact, I would even tell you na in a marketplace where opportunities are rife on the short side, you have to learn to stay away or avoid the markets when you have to. You cannot actually DCA in an environment. DCA is dollar cost averaging. A lot of people would think na, I'll just dollar cost average. I'll just dollar cost average because I cannot get out of my mess. That is something perhaps that other people just say to themselves because they just don't know how to cut a loss. Really, I don't know if that's really an excuse, but I would say that even a 20% loss is better than a 50 to 80% loss. So it's, I think most people, you have to consider what's my upside here and what's my downside here. So let's argue. Let's talk about some Philippine stocks here. Okay, how much more can the Philippines sell off? Now, you take a look at your index. So far, your banks are holding up. But the banks are actually trading near resistances. Take a look at where the banks in the Philippines are. Your BDO is trading more than 1 times book value. It's trading at 127 pesos today. We argue this is actually in a decline, downtrend yan. So even if they would earn a lot on time deposits, at some point in time, the Filipinos will also clamor. They would say, if I can earn 2 to 3% in the time deposit in the USD, why should I park my money in BDO unless BDO pays me at least 3% man lang? Peso na nga yan. We're not even talking about the dollar. The dollar is already appreciating 20% from the Philippine peso, tapos nagbabayad pa ng from 0.5% to 2.5% in JP Morgan. So there's a lot of reasons why the Philippine banks would have higher costs over time. Bakit? Because deposit costs will not forever remain low. I think the Filipinos would tell themselves, look, I'm depositing a lot of money here in BDO. I'm depositing a lot of money here in BPI. If my 1 million peso, kahit na hindi 100 million pesos yan, is not earning a single thing, a single interest here, I'd better just shift it to a company, a bank that will pay me at least 2% time dep. Di ba? There's a lot of alternatives. There's like 2-3% dollar deposits pa yan. Di ba? So that is something that the Philippine banks would eventually have to face. So your BDO is actually likely gonna go down. Your let's take a look at your BPI. BPI is trading near 96, no? 95, 94, still actually near resistances. We argue that the banks, although they outperformed, would be in a trading range. So umangyat na yan, no? From 2022, outperformed na yung banks actually. This year, the banks didn't fall as much as the rest. They behaved actually on a neutral standpoint, which means that for 2023, the banks are expected to remain neutral. However, even if they're expected to remain neutral, a housing crash or a property crash can actually render large defaults and large sell-offs, which means that BPI can fall to 80 pesos. Now, you might argue, nako, that's not true, Nikki. BPI has very huge provision of losses already when it comes to credit card defaults. But my argument here is that risks remain, and we can argue na malaki yung risk rather than the reward. So if BPI cannot even break 102 for almost 7 years, what makes me think that 2023 that BPI will break above 102? And the answer is that it won't, no? Even if BPI is a stronger bank, bought more assets, di ba? BPI merged just recently with our Robinson's Bank. So the 100 pesos today is actually larger asset base, larger asset pool, and you get it cheaper. That's true, but that is also evident true for other companies. That's also true for SM. That's also true for Pure Gold, diba? There's a lot of companies here in the Philippines that are from a value play, it's cheap. But we cannot argue just because it's cheap that we would buy. The macro hasn't changed. So the macro is right now so huge that right now the Philippine market is just trying to price in interest rate hikes. We have not even priced in the geopolitical war that is real. There's a real war there's a World War III. Either we're living in it or we're at year one or year two of a World War III, which means that at some point in time we will have to choose our allies, China or US. I would say naman that the Philippines, being a Bongbong Marcos president, has already chosen to be authoritarian. The Duterte Marcos era seems to be more of a Xi Jinping type of a governance. So we I think lang we would likely be something of a Chinese centric ally, which means in some ways maybe China will give us cheap goods, cheap food, cheap oil. I don't know, that might be possible, no, but that is also something that I don't know if magkakaroon ng sanctions in the future, no. There are several risks that mas malaki yung risk actually than reward. So just take a look at the positioning of the market. BPI at resistance, BDO at resistance. What can be said about Metrobank? Metrobank is lower trend, no, downtrend. You've got a lot of buyers here at 47, 46, but a lot of selling pressure here at 60. I don't know, maybe we can even rally to 55, but we might argue na 55 to 60 for Metrobank will still have some selling pressure. Banks in general have been a safe haven. Banks, utilities have so far become safe havens, as well as energy in the Philippine market. But I think what you can only argue in the Philippines is that there's no such thing as safe. Everything is a trade, whether it be properties, whether it be telecoms, even if telecoms like telecommunication, when Globe actually rallied to 2.4 above, I actually sold, no, because even if we argue malakas naman ang Globe, malakas naman ang mga GCash, yes, well, for now I don't know how big of an impact it is in the bottom line. But arguably, the fact na Globe is staying strong naman, 2,000 to 2.5, tells you that this will be a trading range. This is a trading range. We don't have uptrends in the Philippine market. The last uptrend that we had is renewable energy. Is ASEN still a renewable energy play? The answer is yes, but the problem why it's falling down is because renewable energy play that is not paying a dividend, that is not profitable, will also be succumbing to 70-80% drops, no? So far, a 70% drop on ASEN means 13 pesos to 3 pesos. Can 6 pesos go down to 3 or 4? The answer is it could happen, guys. I'm just here trying to be more realistic rather than being pessimistic. Look at the downtrends in play here for ASEN, 12, 10, 9. It's trading at 606, recent rally high to about 660, and then you've got a lot of selling pressure. You've got some supports perhaps at 4. Nicolasia actually might be fine. Shell might be fine because as long as the world is trying to stock up a lot of this lithium, nickel, actually worldwide, there's a lot of people stocking up oil inventories. So they're not necessarily consuming oil. They're just stocking it up for the eventual price increases of oil. So if I was Petron or I was Shell, I would stock up a lot of oil and then sell it to the market at high prices. So I would say there is really supposed to be outperformance. We haven't seen outperformance on Shell Philippines just yet, but it may happen. Let's take a look after the companies do so. Why is a company going down like FB despite good fundamentals and dividends? Um, I think irrational behavior is really normal in a bear market. In fact, that's the reason why I try to buy 70%, 80% declines. You might argue, if FB is falling like that, would URC fall like that? Will CNPF fall like that? And the answer is highly possible, no? Right now, no, and so unfortunately for people who look at fundamentals, a company can stay perennially actually go down, no. So look at these. I know that everyone is consuming canned goods in a recession. Mahirap tayo, so hindi kakain ng masyadong maraming pork and beef and stuff, no. FB is chicken, pork, magnolia, right? I know what you're talking about, pure foods. I think it's not, sometimes it's not about the current earnings, it's about the future earnings. The market is very scared. Unfortunately, pa-downtrend ang pati pagkain. So, wala akong nakikitang resilient play in the Philippines except for commodities. Kasi commodities lang yung pwede mong i-stock up, hindi naman magsuspoil yun eh. And even so, even if I see commodities and utilities being a defensive area, it does not mean that it will stay forever high. Arguably, I think Meralco might go up because electricity, water, technically speaking, even in past recessions, hindi talaga siya mabilis mag-drop eh. People usually make a safe haven play in these names. There will come a time that the market will make a safe haven play on consumer staples like FD. But I think right now, because FD is also not in the index, the market will prioritize, siguro, in my view, prioritize nila cash because they think that they can make some money in cash. Because dati, you cannot make interest talaga in cash. Right now, you put your money in the bank. So, a lot of alternatives. Paymaya pays 5%, but that could fall, maybe maging 4% or 3%. Actually, yun yung reason kaya many people like to be in the US dollar. Because dapat the Philippine peso raises rates. But the Bangko Sentral in the Philippines is so scared that if they raise rates, magkaroon ng default. Obviously, magkakaroon ka ng massive housing crash, massive layoffs. Sometimes that happens. So, not sometimes. That is proven in past recessions. Talagang layoff. So, in some ways, because you cannot short the Philippine market, you can only try, in the Philippine market, you can only try to hide in cash. You can only try to attempt to buy some dollars. And when you do buy dollars, learn to actually navigate the markets by selling companies that really has leeway to fall. So, then the Philippines, talagang you would be trading, sometimes magkakaroon ng massive drop, PSCI drops 5.5, 5.4, 5.8. May kita mo yung exaggeration eh. You would see that. So when it happens, that's when you buy. You'll say to yourself, oh, when SM is trading near 600, when SM trades at 500, I'll buy it. Oh, when the replacement value on companies is far too, kasi you can argue naman na okay, Cebu Pacific, I argue at 35 cheap yan. Yes, baka mag-30. But if you're gonna replace the airplanes, magkano? 60, 70? So at some point in time, people would still say, okay, replacement value na lang. I'll buy it just for the replacement value. So you can trade it. Arguably, matritrade mo. So itre-trade mo na lang yung mga matritrade mo. Again, you would argue to yourself, can I actually replace water? Can I replace electricity? Mahirap. Monopoly yan eh. In the Philippines kasi, regulated industries yan. Monopoly yan. There is a monopoly in terms of food production. Actually, walang listed company about food production. Had there been, magiging sobrang lakas nun. But arguably, ang food production play mo lang sa Pilipinas would be URC, Century Tuna, ano ba mga food manufacturers natin? Yun lang ata, URC and CNPF. FB, yes. FB is a food manufacturer kasi they raise chickens, they raise poultry, di ba? We're talking about San Miguel Food and Beverage here, no? Okay. Arguably, tama naman yan. Downtrend, no? So, there will come a time that people would see, teka lang, FB is a food producer. I would say na hihintayin ng market. Ako, I don't want to predict the bottom kasi eh. I try to use history. Last 2 weeks when I made the call, I just really tried to study what happened in 1994 to 2003. I also tried to study what happened during the previous crisis. And all the crisis tells me, whether it be year 2000 time, during the bubble of NASDAQ, year 2008 crisis, everything points out to at least 50 to 75% declines. So that means you should be waiting for PSCI 4,000, 5,000. And you might argue, what if that doesn't happen? What if it just remains 6,000? Okay lang. That means that you're in cash, you're waiting, and in the meantime, if you're waiting for the markets to fall and it's not falling, you do earn interest. You earn some interest in cash. If it's in the USD deposit, you have some interest in cash. Now, arguably, even the Philippine markets, maghanap ka lang ng time dep, magkakaroon ka rin ng time deposit rate. 5% sa may GCash, yung mga CIMB, 5% time deposit rate. You can just park there in the meantime while you're waiting. I don't think that REITs are guaranteed. So there's a question in the comment. REITs dividend yields are looking good on par with bonds. Are you bullish on office space in the future despite work from home? No, I'm not. Actually, guys, the Philippine office REITs like Mega World is really gonna have a tough time. This is not just about the POGOs leaving the Philippines. The reason why is because most people are indeed working from home. And if they want to save on costs, would they pay a 100,000 peso rent or will they actually save their employees? Mas importante, guys, to save the employees. Not to lay off employees, but to actually stop paying rental. So, knowing that, the future of office REITs is not good. Shopping mall REITs might actually remain relatively resilient, but at the same time, the resiliency of SMPH is not something that you have to pay a premium for. Why pay 30 to 40 times PE multiple when you can probably get, as you know, makakuha ka naman ng 7% dividend yield sa PLDT eh. And how much do you pay PLDT? 7, 8 times PE. Less than 10 times PE. Now, if you're not going to do that with the PLDT, bilhin mo sa US. Look at the US and China. I'm gonna show to you. Ang US na AT&T, for a time, pinabili ko sila sa $15 dito. Umangat ng 18. Siyempre sa 18, sell ka na rin, di ba? But that's 20%, no? 15, 14 to 18 yan. Now, if AT&T falls down back to 15, bilhin mo. That's a 7%, 8% yield with 7 times PE multiple. What I'm saying here, guys, is that hindi tayo, guys, pwede tanga. Porque Pilipino tayo, kailangan ba Pilipinas ang ini-invest natin? Di ba tayo pwede mag-USD? Di ba tayo pwede mag-dollar time deposit? Ganun na ba tayo katanga na hindi man lang tayo marunong mag-open ng interactive brokers? Di ba tayo marunong mag-open ng mga Webull? Hindi tayo tanga. Or kung tanga ka forever, edi malulugi ka forever. May tanong, sa FB, baka dahil sa alcoholic products which are discretionary spending. Actually, malakas ang discretionary spending sa mga beers na prove yun ng isang company sa US, SAM actually. SAM did that sa US, Boston Beer. Kaya yan nag-outperform from 300, umangat ng 400. So, I'm not saying that FB is not a good stock pick. Tansya ko over a few sessions, over a few months, some people might actually think, teka lang, nagproproduce siya ng pagkain, nagproproduce siya ng beer, baka San Miguel Food and Beverage is a resilient company. I haven't studied the PE ratio of FB, so hindi ko masabi murang-mura ba yan. Kasi if I'm gonna say mura yon, I will have to compare it not just Philippine counterparts. Because take note, investing in the Philippines, talo ka na kaagad ng 10 to 20%. Devaluation pa lang, Devaluation pa lang. Ilipat ko lang yung peso ko to dollar, panalo na ako eh. So maiisip mo yun eh. Hindi tayo tanga dito. Bakit? Porket may 100,000 pesos ka, hindi mo ba pwede yan ipalit ng dollar paunti-unti? So you have to consider the fact na kahit na mura ang Pilipinas, there's two risks that are always seen. Forex devaluation risk. How are we gonna avoid that? And then, titingnan ko rin, how resilient really is the company? And is it truly consistently paying dividends? The question here is consistency. Ang PLDT Meralco Globe, proven over time for the last 20 plus years, paying dividends yan. The banks also pay dividends every year. That's the reason kaya mataas pa yung banks, pero babagsak din yan eventually. But if ang mga URC Monde, they do pay dividends, pero maliit eh. Less than 2% yield. So ako, ang tansya ko dyan, to save the stores like that, actually, mura, if you would argue, mura talaga ngayon ang Mrs. G and Pure Gold, considering staple ang grocery. Even in a recession, you have to go to the supermarket to buy your URC products, Century Tuna products, pati San Miguel food and beverage product. So, laging papatungan niya ni Mrs. G and ni Pure Gold. Papatungan niya yan. Pati si SSI, papatungan, ay hindi, SSI, wala naman na yung supermarket, no? Wala na yung supermarket niya eh. But, any company that has that stable profits, babayaran niya ng market. Usapan lang is, kailangan ba hintayin kong 5 times PE multiple? Or pwede ng 10 times PE multiple? Ang URC and Monde, wala yan sa 10 times multiple. Nasa mga 20 plus times multiple. Nasa more than 20 times pa nga yan eh. So, hindi siya mura. Hindi siya sobrang cheap. I could argue, the reason why I'm not buying URC at 120 pesos is because it's expensive, not because I don't like it. The reason I'm not buying SM Prime is not because I don't believe that the Filipinos are not gonna go to the mall. They are going to malls. SM Prime is indeed profitable. But should I pay 30 times multiple for it? That's the question naman eh. And I'm not gonna pay that. I can pay the same price abroad. And cheaper pa. So there's a lot of things. Now there's a question. Is it viable to change the dollar right now for IBKR? You have to ask yourself, 1994 till 2003, the Asian financial crisis, 1997 till 2003, 6 years. Your peso devalued to the dollar from 26 to 53. 100% devalued yan. 100% devaluation. Now, kahit sabihin natin, 50% devaluation na lang. From 40, nasa 60 na tayo. Pupunta ba tayong 80 o pupunta tayong 40? Isipin mo, not in the next 3 months, not even in the next 3 days. Let's think about it for the next 10 years. If the dollar is gonna be so strong, why would I actually park my money in Philippine pesos? I'm gonna have to park it in Philippine pesos if and only if it's really, really attractive. That's why I said to you guys, I'm still waiting for a further drop in the Philippine markets. Where will it be tempting? Maybe 1 peso Mega World, maybe SM Prime at 16, maybe 20 peso SM Prime. Now, some people would say, Nikki, that's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous if I'm thinking 10 years. I'm not thinking about the next year. I'm thinking about the further devaluation of the dollar peso. Whether or not that happens, wala naman na akong risk if I'm holding cash. Ang risk ko lang if I hold cash is sa peso nagde-devalue. Correct. So, hopefully, may cash ka, may dollar ka, so that even if you're earning in pesos, you don't necessarily have to lose so much. Kasi may time debt na rin, guys. Just check na lang the banks. Minsan lang kasi mataas yung hinihingi nilang time debt. The nice thing about GCash, walang minimum 50,000 pesos, pwede na yan. 5,000 pesos, pwede mo yun gawin. You have about 5% Philippine peso time debt naman doon. Then you can withdraw it anytime you wish. Sa dollar naman, you can always convert dollar tether or USD. Yung iba ganun eh, peso nililipat nila sa USD tether or BUSD, Binance Dollar. They earn about 5% dollar interest, pero minsan kasi 3% lang eh. You just really have to find where you feel comfortable to put your dollar. Of course, others just put it in a private bank because they have access to it. But even if you don't have private banks, sa Binance, you can actually. Let me show to you. For those who don't know how, teka lang. I do have some USD, naka-USDT, tapos naka-earn lang, earning dollar, Binance Earn. So, wala ba kayong Binance, guys? Hindi kayo nag-open ng mga Binance accounts? Sa Binance, you can earn, wag nyo lang tingnan yung mga yan, gaguhan din naman yan. Doon lang kayo sa USDT. Actually, yung 8%, ano yan, 8% only for 0 to 1,000. Mapapansin mo, 0.7% na lang ang USD Tether. Actually, dati 2% pa yan, nag 5% pa yan eh. So, masyado na ngang mababa yung binibigay ng Binance. Dati mataas po, guys. Yung 8% ng USDT ng Binance, $1,000 lang yan. Pang 50,000 pesos lang yan. Pag nagde-deposit ka na ng mga $5,000 above, hindi na kaya. Maliit na masyado Binance. Mas maganda pa guys ang interactive brokers when it comes to idle balance deposit. 2.5% ang IBKR. So, yun po. Binance is only for trading. Kung tipong Binance Earn, maliit din yung bayad ng Binance eh. Ang panalo mo lang sa Binance, yung dollar tether, yung the fact na 50 pesos, nag-59, baka mag-60, dun ka panalo. Pero yung sasabihin mo, kumikita yung interest ng dollar mo, maliit lang yun. Mas malaki pa actually yung bigay ng bangko eh kaysa sa Binance. Pero up to you. I mean, marami naman tayong alternatives talaga eh. So, that's why wag tayong maging tanga. Matuto tayo. You cannot actually be tanga in an environment na zero interest rate going 5% interest rate. 5% Fed funds rate. So, you have to remember 5% interest rate. Lahat ng ibang tao nangungutang yan 100M, 200 million. Somebody's gonna default there. Pag nag-default yon, magkakaroon ng crisis sa market, magkakaroon ng mas mabuti safe. Prepared for safety. Okay, bye-bye.